Inescapable cell designed specifically for one prisoner by the Infographics Show. Make sure you subscribe.
Where would you put the most dangerous prisoner in all of America? What lengths would you go to keep him locked down? Barbed wire, steel doors, motion sensors, guard dogs, sharpshooters? In his cell, how many liberties and basic necessities could you strip away and whittle down while still keeping him alive? At what point did you cross the line from detention to torture? We've all seen Alcatraz, a huge looming block of cells isolated on an island. The waters are icy, the currents are vicious. Even if you could somehow break out of your cell and off the island, you'd drown or be thrown against the rocks before you made it halfway to the mainland. What if we told you that there's a prison that's even more severe? A facility that's infamous for its utter inescapability, where prisoners will spend decades of their lives in the same 2 concrete rooms, never breathing fresh air, never feeling sunlight on their faces. A place where you'd send the man so dangerous that human contact is strictly off limits at all times. Welcome to Florence AdMax. Nicknamed the Alcatraz of the Rockies, this supermax prison was built near Florence, Colorado, to be for the worst of the worst. Go anywhere near the 37-acre site, and you'll see watchtowers dotting the landscape. In those towers, you won't find just lookouts. You'll see sunlight glinting off the scopes of sniper rifles. Beneath the ground at your feet are hidden pressure pads. Sweeping the area are an undisclosed number of laser beams, detecting any kind of motion. A team of highly trained guard dogs patrol the grounds constantly, ready to chase down any escapees at the drop of a hat. But before we can even use the word escape seriously, you need to consider what's on the other side of the 12-foot-high razor wire fences encircling the whole facility. Floodlights illuminate the entire place day and night. Motion detectors watch most of the ground, but anywhere they can't see, you can bet will be covered by the extensive network of security cameras, each one remote controlled. There are no
Who the fuck would be locked up in here, bro? I thought Alcatraz was the worst of the worst, bro. Like, if you have a criminal that can escape Alcatraz, alright, basically not only escape the prison, but like swim in the water with sharks and everything, I'm guessing this is where you put them? Who the fuck?
External windows to bust out of, at least none larger than a few inches and equally as thick. Your best bet would be to get out one of the doors. Should be doable. There are only
do they use steel doors instead of windows? They use steel doors instead of windows? Why even have steel doors at that point? At that point, just make all of this a wall, no? Isn't that just more efficient?
1,500 of them.
Or maybe personnel gets out of the... Nah, that wouldn't make sense. They'd fall out.
One reinforced steel. The concept of breaking out of Florence AdMax is about as close to an impossibility as it can get. You would need nothing short of U.S. military to get in or out of that place if they didn't want you to. Looking at it from
U.S. military-grade weapons? No, that can't be. Like, surely there's like some kind of tool you can use, like a tool in a toolbox, and you know, if you're an expert at what you do, like if you're an expert at using what are they called? You know that there's this one tool that you like saw metal in half with, and you know you wear like one of these masks so that you don't get a bunch of particles in your face, and you just kind of, you know what I'm talking about? I don't know what they're called, but like you can like saw through metal. And listen, I'm sure that the steel doors to these prisons are supposed to handle that. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm just saying it feels weird that only U.S., like basically cluster bombs or whatever weapons he's talking about, is the only way to break open those doors. There's got to be another way.
Above, we can see the different blocks.
Like
there
TNT,
are general
bro.
population units,
TNT.
Delta, Echo, Fox, and Gulf, where most of the prison's approximately 350 inmates are housed. Then there's the Special Housing Unit, SHU, used for solitary confinement, where inmates may be moved temporarily as punishment for bad behavior. But wait, it gets worse, much worse. Beyond the SHU is the Control Unit, where gang leaders are housed, cutting them off from their followers, as well as the kind of prisoners who tend to incite violence in the larger units. Here you'll find some of the most notorious gang leaders Chicago and New York have ever seen. James Little Jimmy Marcello, who has a decades-long rap sheet of extortion, loan sharking, and murder, is neighbors with Omar O.G. Mac Porty, who portray gangsters and the unique Blood Nation while in Rikers. But they're nothing compared to the main man on the block, Joaquin Archibaldo Guzman Loera.
Wait.
You probably know him by his other name, El Chapo.
Wait,
Under
El
his rule,
Chapo's locked up in here. Wait, that actually makes sense, bro. Because didn't he escape like 2 different prisons or
the
something?
cartel raked in at least $3 billion per
like,
year
dug
in
a hole?
revenue. Experts have estimated that around 25% of all illegal drugs that entered the U.S. via Mexico come through El
That is
Chapo's ring. He was such a danger that
unbelievable.
the city of Chicago branded him as public enemy number 1, the first of that title since Al Capone. That's gotta be the worst of the worst right there. You can't get much higher security than El Chapo, right? Wrong. Beyond the control unit is the Special Security Unit, or H Unit. It's here that America sends some of its most dangerous terrorists, people who have special rules and regulations made just for them due to the nature of their crimes. In those cells, you'll find some of the most infamous murderers, terrorists, and serial killers in U.S. history. The Unabomber, Theodore Kaczynski, was here all the way up to 2021, past his cell, serving 3 life terms plus
think I've heard
110
of
years
him.
in prison without parole, is the Shoe Bomber, Richard Reed, who tried to take down a transatlantic flight in 2001 with an explosive in his shoe. Former FBI agent turned Soviet spy Robert Philip Hansen is serving 15 consecutive life sentences just around the
Holy.
corner. Seeing the conditions in Guantanamo
Wait, they're all locked up in the same place. Wouldn't it be better to just have like one S-class level threat in different places? Like, what if these guys team up? I mean, probably wouldn't do anything. That's not what I'm saying, but like, I'm just saying, isn't it a little bit stressful to have to keep track of all of these people? I mean, these are like menaces. I think I recognize that that Theodore guy. I think I've heard of him from like a Fern video or something, but I'm not sure.
Bay, it's apparent just how detested terrorists are in the United States prison system. But that's a video for another day. Unit H must be the final stage in the Supermax prison, the most secure wing for the most dangerous prisoners. But no, there's one more.
What?
Prison officers describe the place as a cleaner version of hell. The smallest unit in the whole complex, it has just 4 cells. This is Range 13. In all of the prison's 30-year history, we only publicly know of 3 men who have been held here. And it is here we'll find a prisoner so dangerous that this entire facility was designed because of his actions. The prisoner who holds
Are you serious? Wait, no. Wait, no. You're telling me that one man's actions made the US government build this insane prison where terrorists and spies and El Chapo is locked up in. Who the hell could it be? Okay, surely I must have heard of him then. Okay, it's not Bin Laden, he's dead, obviously. It can't be Dahmer. It can't be Ted Bundy. Bro, who actually would be a bigger threat than, like, those guys?
the record for the second longest time spent in solitary confinement in U.S. prison history, beaten only by Albert Woodfox, who was kept in solitary for 43 years. It's the former leader of the Aryan Brotherhood, Thomas Edward Silverstein. We'll give you a tour of his cell soon enough, but first we should dive into what one man can possibly do that's so heinous that he's barred from any and all human contact for the rest
Aryan Brotherhood, obviously that doesn't sound good, but I've never heard of Thomas Silverstein.
of his life, multiple times over. Terrible Tom Silverstein was born February 4th, 1952, in Long Beach, California. Even before he was born, his life was in turmoil. His mother, Virginia, was having an affair with a man named Thomas Conway. As an adult, Tommy claimed that Thomas Conway was his biological father, which is likely part of what led Virginia to divorce her husband and remarry Conway before little Tommy was even born. Born Thomas Conway, named after his mother's brand new husband, the little boy didn't have long to get used to his family life before it was upended again. The marriage broke down, and by Tommy's 4th birthday, he had another father, a man named Sid Silverstein. Silverstein adopted the boy as his own and passed on his surname, but it was clear from a young age that Tommy Silverstein was not going to live an easy life. Virginia was a drinker. The more she drank, the more violent she'd become, something Thomas would become more familiar with. One of Silverstein's earliest memories was a time when he had wet the bed. His mother flew into a rage and grabbed a paper cup from the kitchen. She demanded that he pee into the cup and then drink it. She warned him that
What?
this was going to happen every time he wet the bed from that point on. Silverstein.
Okay. That's one way to teach your child there, man.
Was incredibly timid growing up, always shying away from other kids and not wanting to engage at school. The other kids, having heard the Jewish surname Silverstein and seeing him as a weak target, started to pick on him. This anti-Semitic bullying started from a young age. Tommy returned home from school.
Wait, hold on. Anti-Semitic bullying? And he's a member of the Aryan Brotherhood? Okay, no, this guy's lore is gonna be... No, this guy's lore is gonna be insane, bro. What the fuck?
One day with a bloody nose, which was the work of an older boy named Gary. The next day, Virginia waited outside the school for Gary to leave. When she saw him, she grabbed the boy and held him still, demanding that Tommy punch him in the face as hard as he could. Tommy did what he was told. The next day, Gary's father tried to return the favor, snatching Tommy on his way home, but the boy escaped and ran home. That night, in a drunken rage, Virginia took Tommy to Gary's family's home and threw bricks through the windows.
Bro, nah, who the fuck is this guy's mother, bro? Bro, Virginia is insane. Are you crazy? What? Who is this? Drink your own pee, punch your bully, and then she attacked? Okay, bro, I don't even...
Escaped and ran home. That night, in a drunken rage, Virginia took Tommy to Gary's family's home and threw bricks through the windows. The lesson she was doing her best to drill into him was that violence was always the solution, and any kind of vulnerability was weakness, and she would not have a weak son. It was Tommy's job to do the worst jobs in the house. Virginia had a chihuahua who would defecate everywhere, so she decided it was her son's job to clean it up for her. One day, as he was doing the job, the dog bit him on the hand. This time, it was Tommy's turn to fly into a rage. He hauled the dog outside and hung it from the tree by its leash, lynching the animal to within an inch of its life. Realizing the horror of what he was doing, Tommy let it go and cradled the dog in his arms as it panted feebly on the edge of death. At that moment, looking down at the dog, Tommy saw himself, but something else clicked too. As much as he felt like a monster for what he had done, he just couldn't help but savor the sweet taste of revenge. That dog was smaller than him. For the first time in his life, he was bigger and tougher. Sure enough, once Tommy got into high school, the table started to turn. He hit a growth spurt and soon towered over his mom. Just before his 15th birthday, Tommy snuck out of the bedroom in the middle of the night. He knew where Sid kept the shotgun, and he tiptoed over to the weapon,
she's dead. Oh my god, she's dead. We haven't even... Bro, he's not even an adult yet. Are you actually kidding, bro? I don't mean to pause, but I feel like I kind of have to. Like, what is this backstory, bro? What on earth is this actual backstory?
A light from the street lamps coming through the window. Reaching out a trembling hand, Tommy took the gun, surprised by how heavy it was. Quietly as he could, he crept into his mom's room, where she and Sid were lying fast asleep. Tommy took a deep breath and walked over to her side of the bed.
Dead.
Looking down at her from his new height, he felt hatred filling his entire being. Gently as he could, he raised the shotgun and laid the barrel perfectly under her chin. His hands were trembling, but his mind was surprisingly steady. He pulled the trigger. Click. The gun was empty. Tommy let out a shaky breath, took the gun away from his mother's head, and put it back where he found it. The next day at breakfast, he didn't talk about what had happened, but he sat there, feeling a strange sense of peace. He could do it. He knew that now. He had what it took to kill her if he wanted to. From that moment on, he fought back. He wouldn't put up with his mother's aggression any longer. He'd fight with Sid whenever the man would try to discipline him. Despite having the man's surname, Tommy had never seen Sid as his real father. He'd always remained attached to Thomas Conway, who for much of his life had been in and out of prison. Everybody was poor, but Thomas Conway always had schemes to try to change that. At age 19, Tommy Silverstein got roped into a chain of events that would change his life forever. Thomas Conway was in the robbery game. Armed robbery, to be specific. He liked to have a crew with him to hit target spots hard and get out quickly. Looking for new recruits, he brought along Tommy as a new recruit. But the robbery went wrong. They got caught, and Tommy was locked up in San Quentin Prison in California. 4 years later, Tommy got paroled, but rather than try to turn his life around, he committed to the job, going out for another string of robberies with his father. This time, when they got caught, the sentence was much more.
So now his biological dad and him are committing robbery. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna give this some time, but I think I can start to see why they might have built this facility for something that he's gonna do. I mean, the dude literally failed to kill his mother, and then the next morning he sat and he ate his breakfast in peace, in peace. Bro, he had never been happier. He had never been happier because he knew he could do it. He had discovered himself. Yeah, GG's, bro. Like, the kill streak is about to go insane.
More severe. Now 23 and a repeat offender for armed robbery, Tommy was given a much harsher sentence of 15 years. A young man now, he wouldn't be out of prison until he was nearly 40. When he was to get out, what could he even do? Who could he be? Starting your life at 38 with little education, a criminal record, childhood trauma, and the life experience of a 23-year-old is a bleak future indeed. For all intents and purposes, Tommy's life became a prison. The four walls around him became the limits of his existence, and like an animal raised in a zoo, he adjusted to his environment. Tommy was sent to prison in Leavenworth, Kansas, with a fierce racial gang culture inside. Tommy found acceptance in the Aryan Brotherhood. No longer was he being picked on for kids thinking he was Jewish. Now he was the bully. This was in the late 70s and early 80s, so heroin usage was rampant in the prison system. Tommy was involved in trafficking it around, a job he found he was pretty good at. It wasn't Tommy's first experience like this. When he was 14, Tommy had been sent off to the California Youth Authority Reformatory, a facility designed to reform young teenagers and change them from their ways before it was too late. The reality was almost the total opposite. When talking about the place near the end of his life, Tommy said that all it did was reinforce the lessons he learned as a kid. In his own words, anyone not willing to fight was abused. But one day in Leavenworth,
exactly, like literally his whole, it's as if God looked down on this man and is like, yeah, I'm gonna basically set up a bunch of events in your life that's basically gonna lead you to become the most racist, the most diabolical, and the most violent person ever. I mean, really, like, what can you even do about this, bro? Abusive start to his childhood, then he's bullied for being Jewish, then he tries to kill his mom, finds peace, then he goes out and robs a bank with his biological father, then he gets locked up for 15 years at age, what, 15, 16? Bro, like, of course, like, at this point, like, yeah, no shit, he's fucking, this is his life now, man.
Said no to him. Danny Atwell, a fellow prisoner, refused to be a heroin mule for the Aryan Brotherhood. Tommy dealt with the situation the only way he knew how. He stabbed Danny Atwell to death, allegedly. You see, while this conviction was later overturned in 1985, as it came to light that those giving evidence against Silverstein were lying, it was enough to have him transferred to more secure confinement at USP Marion, Illinois, with a life sentence added to his time behind bars. He was placed in the control unit, essentially solitary confinement, when he arrived, as he was deemed to be a highly disruptive and dangerous presence. At Marion, he had a ceiling light in his cell that would be on permanently so that the security cameras pointed at him wouldn't miss a thing. He struggled to sleep and reported that the prison guards were antagonistic and cruel to him. In 1981, Silverstein was on trial again. This time it was for killing Robert Chappelle, a member of the DC Blacks gang. Much like his first trial, this was based on witness statements, which Silverstein had strenuously denied for all of his life. This murder had caused a real stir throughout the prison, which was only made worse when one of the leaders of the DC Blacks gang was transferred from another prison entirely and put just a couple of doors down from Silverstein.
Oh, no.
With the trial still dragging on, Raymond Lee Cadillac Smith arrived at USP Marion
Oh,
and
there's gonna be a
made
war.
threats that he was going to kill Tommy Silverstein the first
Wait,
chance
hold on,
he
what
got.
did he say?
With the trial still dragging on, Raymond Lee Cadillac Smith arrived at USP Marion and immediately made threats that he was going to kill Tommy Silverstein the first chance he got. Silverstein protested his innocence, but it fell on deaf ears. The guards in the prison did little to keep the two men apart. Silverstein even believed that they were deliberately putting the men together all the time in the hopes they would kill each other. And sure enough, it happened. Silverstein, along with his friend Clayton Fountain, stabbed Cadillac 67 times. They then paraded his body up and down the walkways outside of the cells, showing everybody in prison exactly what
What do
they
you mean paraded? What do you mean paraded? So literally, the officers, yeah, it's like he said, the officers did not care, bro. They wanted him gone, I guess. Did they want him to be paraded as well? I mean, I feel like you would probably stop this when it happened.
had done and why they weren't to be messed with. You're either the bully or the victim. Silverstein had made up his mind about which he'd be. Another life sentence was added to his time, confirming that Tommy Silverstein would never be a free man again. So he got used to life inside. One hobby he took up was painting, but little did he know that this was to be the start of the worst years of his life. United States prisons have a rule that any artwork created by prisoners that depicts murder is to be confiscated and destroyed. Tommy had a number of his paintings taken away from him, for what we may never know. The officer responsible was Merle Klutz. Not only did Tommy hate the man for taking his artwork away, but he alleged the man had been harassing him and bullying him without anyone stepping in to do anything about it. So he decided to do something about it. Walking behind Klutz one day, Tommy had another prisoner sneak him a homemade key to his cuffs and a shank. He leaped at Klutz and stabbed him to death before the other officers could pull him away. Just a few hours later, his friend Clayton Fountain did the exact same thing to another officer. The prison was placed on lockdown immediately. This ran the risk of getting out of control fast. Prison stabbings were common, but when it was between prisoners, it was often seen as an acceptable casualty. That was just the natural order. But when the prisoners started stabbing guards, that could start a riot that would threaten the security of the entire facility. If prisoners suddenly started seeing their guards as vulnerable, able to be killed, what's to stop them from doing that at every opportunity?
Yeah.
The prison system needed to send a message to make an example of Tommy Silverstein. USP Marion's lockdown was indefinite, lasting for 23 years in total. Silverstein was sent to Atlanta, where he was placed in solitary, with strict instructions that he was to have zero human contact. But in the background, larger pieces were starting to fall in place. The BOP began working in earnest on a new project, a new supermax prison in Florence, Colorado. That was to be the ultimate deterrent. Silverstein was in his cell 23 hours a day on his...
For this one guy, they built that shit. I'm not gonna lie, this guy's life is terrible. Like, once again, like, I'm never one to really defend, like, criminals like this' actions. But oh my god, I can totally understand why he's like this. His lore is the most actually, like, sad. I think personally his backstory is incredibly sad, bro. One of the most sad ones I've ever seen. When did he even really, like... Bro, he literally got spawn camped by life to be like this, bro. To be a horrible person. He never even got a chance to, like... to just, I don't know, experience something good.
For close to 4 years. Until all of a sudden his door was opened. It was 1987. Cuban detainees had rioted and taken control of the prison, what became known as the Atlanta prison riots. The Cubans unlocked Silverstein's cell and allowed him to walk freely through the facility, where he eventually found the guards who were being held as hostages. Silverstein knelt down in front of one of them and began to talk. Aware of Silverstein's history, the Cubans were growing nervous. Those hostages were negotiating power. If the guards were to be killed, they'd have nothing protecting them from the military storming the facility and putting the riot to a painful end. Fortunately for them, the guard Silverstein was talking to was his favorite. The man had always made a point of asking Silverstein if his handcuffs were too tight and loosening them if they were. Wiping the sweat from their brows, the Cubans released Silverstein, sending him to the hostage negotiation team outside before he could do any damage. He was transferred back to Leavenworth for 18 more years until eventually the security status of that prison was downgraded. But fortunately, a new facility was up and running now. It was one of the most secure prisons in all of human history, with a cell made specifically for punishment and deterrence. ADX Florence, specifically a cell in range 13. At this point, Tommy Silverstein already spent 22 years in solitary confinement, but in Florence it was about to get a whole lot worse. Welcome to Tommy Silverstein's cell in range 13. Every inch of this cell has specifically been designed to do the bare minimum possible to sustain human life and to remove any last sliver of connection with the outside world. The cell is just 3.5 meters by 2.
Look at that shit. Look at that. I mean, I don't know. I feel like this is probably most prison cells, but if it's solitary confinement, then that dude is not allowed to leave this area. Okay, so this is the sink, maybe? Where's the toilet, bro? What is this? Is this a shower?
Meters, or 12 feet by 7 feet. The total floor space with the room's curved wall amounts to 80 square feet. That's the smallest legal limit for a New York City kitchen. The bed is made from concrete. There's a stool at the foot of the bed, also made from concrete. The toilet bowl itself is made as part of the wall, also concrete. There's an open shower in the corner of the room, so close to the bed that any shower will inevitably wet the bedding. The water is on a timer activated by a push of a button. On the wall at the head of the bed is a window. The window is just 4 inches wide with incredibly thick reinforced glass. In reality, it's more of a slit to allow light through. Tommy Silverstein was to spend 23 hours per day there, receiving food through a slot in the door. The instructions from his previous detention center carried over: 0 human contact. For the other hour in the day, he was taken to what's called the empty swimming pool. This room had marginally more space than his cell, but with much less inside. It was just an empty room. The one feature that made it equivalent to having outdoor time was a 4 by 4 inch sky.
So this guy's outdoor time is literally just walking around in a big empty space. This guy, I mean, could you, and like, once again, 23 hours a day here for the rest of your life. I mean, this is as bad as it gets. I don't think, I think I'm gonna probably get a lot of hate comments from this, but I personally don't think anybody deserves this shit. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I personally think if someone is extremely diabolical and extremely dangerous, just kill the man. Just kill the motherfucker, bro. God, solve so many problems. Especially, like, and like, this is the thing, like, he doesn't really have a family that loves him anyway. At least I don't think so. They haven't really mentioned anything about that. So, like, nobody's even really gonna be affected by his death other than people who could have potentially survived from him, right?
Highlight in the ceiling.
That's
If
what
Tommy
I personally
behaved,
think,
he would be
bro.
given books to read and eventually a small black and white TV. He could have 2 phone calls per month. Aside from that, he was on his own. But there is a big question that we haven't answered in all of this. Why him? ADX Florence houses prisoners like El Chapo and the Unabomber, gang leaders and terrorists. Tommy Silverstein was locked up for armed robbery and committed up to 3 murders. These are obviously awful crimes, but they pale in comparison to running a drug empire larger than dozens of countries'
Yeah, I was thinking the
GDPs.
same thing,
The truth
actually.
is that Tommy Silverstein was there to send a message. An unnamed prison officer, talking to author Pete Early, explained it bluntly. When an inmate kills a guard, he must be punished. We can't execute Silverstein, so we have no choice but to make his life a living hell. Otherwise, other inmates will kill guards too. There has to be some supreme punishment. Every convict knows what Silverstein is going through. We want them to realize that if they cross the same line that he did, they will pay a heavy price. Silverstein's case is a controversial one. The punishment in comparison to the crimes is extreme. Over the course of his lifetime, Tommy Silverstein spent a total of 36 years in those conditions, eclipsing the sentences of people who have done far worse crimes, had stronger evidence, and shown less remorse. As humans, we tend to argue that everyone's life is equally valid, but it is clear that the who of Silverstein.
Nah. I mean, sure, yeah, like, I agree, like, humans do argue that, but I mean, that, what kind of argument is that, bro? Sunshine and rainbows ass argument. Sunshine and rainbows ass statement, bro. Like, sure, like, do they really say that about everyone, by the way? Like, the people who claim that, would they say that about Epstein? Would they say that about Hitler? Because, like, I don't know, like, which people are, I mean, I feel like, yeah, like, those people, they would probably want, I don't know what they would want. Honestly, I'm not even going to speak on what they want, but yeah, it's, I think personally, it's a really pathetic mentality. I mean, it's like, yeah, bro, like, at a certain point, like, for the greater good and saving lives, innocent lives, like, people are just trying to mind their own business and not get stabbed 67 times. To a certain point, like, so you gotta execute a motherfucker, bro. You gotta fucking kill some dude, bro. And yeah, I mean, torture's always an option as well, but we're not gonna get into that, bro. I'm gonna get canceled.
Its victim is the reason for his punishment. If he had killed another prisoner, no one would have batted an eyelid. Yet, because it's a guard, he's now infamous and the subject of a number of human rights complaints. The prison system, rightly or wrongly, has taken extreme actions against one individual to make him a symbol for other prisoners of what happens when they step out of line. Much like all of Silverstein's childhood, it comes down once again to who is the biggest and the strongest. You're either the bully or the victim. In this case, the prison system has chosen to be the bully. They have time and again within these facilities where guards exercise their powers unfairly to keep prisoners in line. Tommy Silverstein, by the end of his life, claimed to have been reformed. He talked openly over the phone about how self-reflection, meditation, and Buddhism had shown him the damage he had caused and the errors of his previous life. A foundation was set up by his family to campaign for reform to prevent what was happening to him from happening to others. This begs the question of what prison is for in the first place. Is it to reform convicts, to educate them and show them right from wrong so they can be released as productive members of society? Or is it there to punish them, to serve justice for the crimes that they have committed and act as a deterrent to scare others from doing the same? Is prison for the people inside it at all, or is it for those on the outside, to help the general population feel safe at night and scare the criminals straight at the thought of being caught? Tommy Silverstein had his own views on these questions. Even though we may not execute people by the masses, as they do in other countries, our government leaders bury people alive for life in cement tombs. It's actually more humane to execute someone than it is to torture them year after year after year. It's hard to know the
100% I agree with that. 100% I agree with that. I actually have a short on my YouTube where I talk about the statement of rock bottom. Like there's like a quote that says like, oh, when you're at rock bottom, there's no way but up. And basically in that short, I was talking about the fact that there really isn't a rock bottom because life can get so diabolically bad that you have no idea. You might think that you are at rock bottom, that you are at the worst moment of your life, that it cannot possibly get worse. You're wrong. That's basically what I argued for. And if I remember correctly, I think I said that. Actually, maybe I didn't say it, but in general, like, I'm a firm believer that torture is worse than death. I saw a clip today, actually, of there was some guy, and I think it was from a movie. I don't think it was like a real thing, but there was a guy who was like, he was crucified, like basically like what Jesus was. He was like held up on like a cross. His arms were tied up, but he was in the water. The cross he was tied up on was in the water, so when like big waves would come, it would like completely wash over him, so he would constantly have to hold his breath and just like survive for as long as possible. And the dude was like, Jesus, save me. And I saw that and I was like, oh hell no. That has got to be like, aside from maybe like the Funky Town Gore shit, like that, bro, that thing is like the worst thing I've ever seen. I actually like, I got shivers through my body. I'm like, please God, don't ever let this shit happen to me. Please. I'm begging you, whatever you do to me, however you kill me, please do not kill me like that. Because that shit looked absolutely awful. Because the thing is, you can't escape. Like, they're gonna drown eventually. They're gonna accidentally inhale water eventually. Or they'll just starve to death, alright? And, yeah, man, that shit low-key traumatized me a little bit. I really hope that... I mean, I don't see why I would get crucified in the water in the first place, but whatever happens in the future, bro, just please do not let that shit happen to me.
Kind of trauma, mental illness, and fury that could drive somebody to commit the kinds of crimes for which these prisoners are responsible. For many of them, their crimes are like flames licking out of the windows of a burning apartment block as the true inferno rages inside. Their actions are the lashings out of a dark mind twisted beyond recognition.
Yeah.
Any of us would find it unbearable to be left alone with just our thoughts for more than a few days. Imagine how it would feel to be alone in that concrete box with only that kind of mind for company year after year, decade after decade.
I feel like I could actually do it better than most. Like, definitely not 23 hours a day for the rest of my life. No, that would also drive me insane. But I have what's called ADD, which is basically ADHD, but without the hyperactivity, which actually, it gives me a special ability. It allows me to basically daydream, yes, but also severely control my daydreams. So I basically have like 4, 5, or 6 different fictional verses in my head, and I will literally imagine, like when I listen to music, I will literally imagine like edits in my head from those different verses. So I can definitely entertain myself with just my head, but not for the rest of my life. No, like soon enough, you're gonna have to either let me see a person, or give me a fucking iPad or something, give me some screen to watch, or serve me some gourmet class meal. I need something to entertain me.
Death be less cruel? At
I
what
think we all do.
point does a monster become a victim? And at what point do the men punishing him become themselves monsters? Now check out Man So Violent, Even Other Prisoners Fear Him, and other insane prison stories.
Bro, look at these fucking thumbnails, bro. The whole Nazi gang here. But yeah, seriously though, that was a W video. Yeah, this dude's backstory is some of the worst shit I've ever heard. I really don't wish this upon anyone, especially not since this guy, you know, he was actually like very timid and like nice, and he was like, he did not deserve the childhood he went through. As for the, you know, the prison and stuff, I have never heard of what was it called? Florence Admax? I've never heard of that prison before. But it is crazy to think that El Chapo and Ted Kaczynski and yeah, like this guy and a bunch of other diabolical people are locked up in there. So yeah, definitely interesting video. Make sure you subscribe to the Infographics Show, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace!